Hey guys, it's Chris at the Ultimate Recycler. Today's video is for the scrappers and the e-waste scrappers. Just a little bit of a thought I had about keeping prices in perspective. So what I'm going to do here is just go through various scrap samples, including some e-waste, and just give you an idea on how they compare, and it'll help yourself weigh up whether it's worthwhile chasing certain things or stripping it to be pure. So what I've done is I've got these scales here, and I've got rough samples that weigh round about a third of a kilo. Around about 350 grams I went to, actually, give or take 10 or 20 grams here and there. That'll suffice as far as this demonstration goes. So this first one is just some steel. It's an old bolt and a cast iron type bracket. I think it was off a tow ball actually. And so I've weighed that out at, what was it, around about 350 grams, just a little bit under. So all of these samples are going to be around about that weight, and that gives you a good idea to visualize what something's worth in a given sample. Alright, so let's go along. You can read half the tags while I'm talking, but let's go along here. So that one I just showed you, steel or iron, 3 cents that sample's worth. Now I should point out with my prices, everything's going to be all over the shop with the current coronavirus, and prices are no doubt drop. I haven't checked. So I'm just going off basically what I remember most of them were worth. So small piece of steel in your hand, about 3 cents. Stainless steel. This is non-magnetic. There's lots of different grades of stainless steel, and they do vary a little bit in price. But around a third of a kilo for that piece of stainless steel. That's off an old water pump housing. 35 cents. So you can see there's a big difference there, and it's certainly worthwhile identifying what is stainless steel. And I'm going to do another video on basic identification, because a lot of people will throw magnetic stuff in with the normal steel because they're not sure, and some scrapyards sort of try and talk you into not taking magnetic stainless steel down, but I think they're just trying to make a few extra bucks. So we'll get touch on that in another video. Aluminium. This is a piece of cast aluminium. There's 35 cents roughly. Okay, now there are different grades of aluminium as well, and the best paying one is what they call extruded aluminium. This piece weighs just over a third of a kilo, and you'd certainly get a better price for that. So look, that might be up around 40-45 cents for that piece. Gives you an idea. What you can hold in your hand is going to be around 30 to 50 cents, depending on how heavy it actually is or how solid. Lead's another one. You can see that comparatively it's a much smaller piece, because lead's clearly, everyone knows lead's very heavy. So that piece around about 50 cents. Brass. Now that's a brass tap. It weighs around about a third of a kilo, about $1.50. And I actually clean brass taps up if they're complete. I use a process called electrolysis, and I've done a video on that. I'll put a link here. And I would get $5 to $10 for a brass tap cleaned up, so it's worth my effort not to sell them as scrap. Copper. This is actually tinned copper, but you can see where I filed it. It's clearly the copper colour. It's clean otherwise, so the price would be down a little bit because it'd go as number 2 copper because it is tinned. But that piece of copper in my hand, just over $2. So you can see that copper is a long way better than steel. Over $2 compared to about 8 cents. And that's why you'll hear a lot of scrappers, get excited when they find a good haul of copper. Moving along, insulated copper wire. Well, a lot of scrappers, particularly street scrappers, always chase cords, and this is why. It's got copper in it. It is insulated, so the price is well down, but that section there is about 80 cents. Right, round about a third of a kilo, a bit over. So you can see why the guys will cut cords and grab extension cords, because it does add up. That's just a small handful, and there's 80 cents. Transformers, electric motors, much the same. Price does vary a little bit of where you're selling them, but that represents about a third of a kilo. A couple of little transformers in my hand, that's about 20 cents worth. Electric motors are much the same. You probably get a little bit larger size because they're not as compact, but there's 20 cents. So you can see that it's not worth spending an hour getting a motor out of something when it's only about 20 cents worth of value. Not that you'd spend an hour getting a piece of copper either, because it's only $2, but still, you know, at least that's worth chasing a bit more than some of the other things. So that's your metals. I might add with copper, there's lots of different grades of copper. That one's a nice clean, either Milbury or bright and shiny. It's called lots of different things in different areas, and the price is certainly going to be better than that. And as the wire, well, if you want to strip your wire, and it's worth it on the larger gauge wires, that's classed as, I think Milbury they'd call it, or #1 copper. And that quantity there, I did weigh up, and that's about 1/3 of a kilo again, and that would probably be up around $2.40, $2.50, something like that. Depends on, as I said, the prices will depend on the market, and it's going to change all the time. Now, getting into the e-waste side of things, here's some examples. RAM sticks out of computers. I weighed up that bundle, around about 1/3 of a kilo again. So you're looking at almost $6 of RAM sticks in your hand. So they're certainly worth chasing, and they do add up. We'll touch back over to this one, computer motherboards. This is the smallest one I had, and it does weigh around about 1/3 of a kilo. So that motherboard represents about $1.40. Okay, not a lot of value, but you know, they're not bad. They're worth grabbing. Mid-grade boards aren't too bad. That lot there represents around about 50 cents. So you can see you wouldn't spend an hour pulling apart a printer to get a little motherboard like this, not a motherboard, a mid-grade board, because that one on its own is probably only 10 to 15 cents. So it does take a lot of them to make some dollars, but if you get a lot of them, they do add up weight-wise reasonably well, and they often stack quite flat, which isn't so bad. Now, low-grade boards, power boards, this represents about 8 cents. And this is the reason I don't actually keep power boards or low-grade boards. All I'd do is rip a couple of the transformers off if I can get to them quickly. Same with the aluminium heat sinks. And if I see an IC chip or something, I might take that off. But I don't save those because the amount of space they take up to make any sort of money is large, and I don't have the storage space to keep them. Plus, it'd fill my van to take a load down, but barely covering the fuel to take a load to Melbourne. So, poor return there on the size you've got. RAM sticks are obviously very good. I'm not going to go into details with other things, like if you're into depopulating and saving the chips and other stuff for precious metal recovery. Some of those can pay pretty well per kilo, but of course it takes a lot of those sort of things to make a kilo. So anyway, that's touched on the e-waste as well, but it just gives you a bit of an idea on perspective. What you can hold in your hand is round about, you know, $1.50 for brass, 50 for lead, 30 cents for aluminium. So it takes obviously a lot more space to store decent value of this, whereas copper, you know, you can fill a small bucket with copper and have a pretty good pay out of it. So I thought I'd do this video just to give you all perspective. And speaking of perspective, what if this piece of lead was a piece of gold? It would probably be a similar shape, maybe slightly smaller, because gold's a very heavy metal like lead is. Well, about 1/3 of a kilo of lead, today's prices, about 22 grand. So that really does put it in perspective, doesn't it? And let's say this one is silver. Let's say it was sterling silver. Oh, by the way, I did work on 18 carat for that one. If this was sterling silver, about 1/3 of a kilo, you'd be looking around about $250. So you can see that gold and silver, the two precious metals there, are way above average scrap prices. You're certainly not going to pick up gold or 18 karat gold or 925 silver in the on street scrapping, but just again puts it in perspective and gives you an idea of relative prices for the quantities you have. Hopefully this helps. Just get it straight in your mind when you're out collecting or when you're stripping things down. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing it for therapeutic reasons. It's enjoyable, but if you're looking to get value for your time, it's handy to know roughly where the value is. Alright, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for watching. I will be doing a scrap identification video at some stage just for beginners. I know there's plenty out there on YouTube, but someone asked me for my take on it, so If you ask, I'll have a go at it. Catch you then.